What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a $1,500 gaming PC build for 2020. I'm going to run you through all of the parts behind me, go through the build process step by step, including all the fiddly cabling and wires, before booting this machine up to see how it looks, but more importantly, how it performs in 8 of the most popular AAA titles. Without any further ado though, let's jump into it. After a quick word from today's video sponsor. Trade Coffee is a site which lets you discover new coffee from the nation's top coffee roasters. They've got a snazzy algorithm which matches your tastes up with the perfect coffee that you haven't even tried yet. I'm super duper picky and a bit new to all this coffee business, so I picked up a range of unique flavours that weren't too intimidating for someone like me. This metric coffee balanced en masse blend has cherry, nougat and hints of wildflower honey. I've got a bit of a sweet tooth, so something like this for me is perfect. All you've got to do is head to the first link in the description below and fill out Trade's coffee quiz. Tell them what you like and what you don't, and they'll match your preferences. Choose your delivery frequency, and suddenly they're arriving at your door. It really is that simple. All you've then got to do is rate and repeat, so Trade can continue sending you coffees that you love. It's kind of like Tinder, but for coffee. Head to the first link in the description below to get 30% off your first bag with free delivery. Happy days! Back to the video for now though. Now, as always, I'm going to kick things off by installing our CPU, RAM and M.2 SSD into the motherboard. Specifically, this is the Gigabyte Z490 Vision G, and it's a really great value Z490 board with a white aesthetic. How incredible does that look? Even the I/O shield is white. Into the motherboard, I'm going to install the CPU, which is Intel's Core i5-10600K. Now, James, why have you gone for an Intel processor? Well, actually, this i5's pretty good value, and with a super fast boost clock speed of nearly 5 GHz, it's going to perform super well for today's build. To install the chip, pull up this retention arm on our CPU socket, aligning the little golden triangle up with the bottom left of our CPU socket. The chip is then going to super gently drop into place, and we're going to return the slot cover back down, and this can take a little bit of pressure before this black cover pops off, and keep this safe if you ever need to return the motherboard or anything like that. I'm next up going to install our RAM today, and this is 16 GB of Nighthawk memory from Teamgroup's T Force brand. Importantly, it's also white and has a fast 3200 MHz clock speed. Pull back the clips on the second and the fourth motherboard RAM DIMM slots and line the notch on the gold strip of your RAM with the corresponding notch on the slot. We can then slide the RAM downwards, and with even pressure to both sides, it will clip into place. Repeat for as many RAM DIMMs as you've got, and just like that, we're all sorted. Next up today, the teeny tiny little screwdriver's back, and that's so we can install our M.2 SSD. We need to remove this screw and this screw on our motherboard's M.2 slot heatsink, which is going to help to keep our SSD drive nice and cool. Once we've done that, we need to remove this tiny little screw that is hidden underneath that cover. We're going to then take our M.2 SSD, and today this is a 500 gig drive from ADATA's XPG lineup. It's an NVMe drive, which means it's super fast and is going to be a great boot drive for today's system. Line the notch once again on the gold strip up with the notch on the M.2 slot, and very gently clip the M.2 drive into place. Then take the tiny little screw we just removed and fasten our M.2 heatsink back into place. With our motherboard assembly, as we're going to call it, all complete, we're now going to move it into our case. And this right here is one of Cooler Master's latest all-mesh white designs. The first step with any new case is to take both the side panels off, and that's going to make the case as easy as possible to work with. We next need to grab this bag of included case accessories from the back of the chassis and make sure that under each of the holes through our motherboard, we've got a corresponding black standoff in our case. In this instance, we have, so we can go ahead and slide the motherboard straight in. The best way to do this is to line up the rear I/O shield with this cutout at the back of our case. The center standoff in the case is usually raised, which will temporarily hold the motherboard nicely into into place. And we're going to use these screws that come included with our case. The next step then in today's build is to install the CPU cooler. This is a relatively new AIO cooler from Cooler Master, and whilst it isn't white, the fans are RGB, so we can make it fit with our colour scheme today. This unit is also really good value, which helps to keep the price of our build overall nice and reasonable. I've decided the best place for the radiator is actually at the front of the case, so we need to remove this front panel just like that. And we then need to remove the 8 pre-installed screws on our front fans. You then want to use these long screws to basically clamp the radiator and these fans together through the front panel. With the radiator now mounted and the front panel back on, all that's left to do is consult the manual in order to get our CPU water block mounted onto our processor. Take this included backplate, which has got some handy sticky tape on to hold it into place. And that's gonna thread nicely through the back of the case, a little something like that. We're then gonna take these kind of standoffs and screw these through the newly installed backplate before finally installing these brackets to our water block and securing it onto the newly installed standoffs with these screws. Oh, and don't forget, a little bit of thermal paste. The next steps today then, before we install the graphics card, is to install our power supply and the rest of our storage. I've picked up a 1TB Samsung 870 QVO drive, which is a pretty affordable SSD that's going to give us loads of super quick mass storage alongside a power supply from Cooler Master, specifically the MWE 650 Gold, which is going to be enough wattage for today's build. The SSD installation is kind of unique, but really quite cool. You need to take these 4 little standoffs, as well as 4 of these little rubber stoppers. They're going to go through the top of the power supply shroud, with the standoffs in the bottom of our SSD drive basically allowing the SSD to slot on top of the power supply shroud, just like so. The power supply installation is next up, and this is pretty simple. We first need to plug up a few modular cables to the unit, the first of which is our 24-pin motherboard power cable, the second a dual 6+2-pin GPU power harness, the third a string of SATA power connectors, and finally, a dual 4+4 pin CPU power header. And they are going to super easily clip into the modular interface on our power supply. Then with the fan facing downwards, sliding it in and securing it down with the same screws we used to install our motherboard. I'm next going to go ahead and install some of our cables and wiring to make things easier later on. I've also picked up these Cooler Master sleeve power supply cable extensions, which in white and black fit this build perfectly. They are optional, but I'll link them alongside all the other components in the description below. The first power connector is our 4+4 pin CPU power, and that goes to the top left of the motherboard. Next up is our 24-pin motherboard power cable. That's the big, tall, fat one, and that goes to the right-hand side of the motherboard. I'm also going to plug up our front panel connectors, and they power the ports on the top of the case. First up is the HD audio connector, which plugs up to the bottom left of the motherboard, just like so. The JFP1 connectors for our power and reset buttons are next up, and these go to the bottom right-hand side of the motherboard. I've popped a diagram on your screen now to make this a little bit easier to follow. They are fiddly, but just take your time, and if you get them wrong, don't worry, nothing's going to explode. Finally, on the front panel we've got our USB 3 connector, and that goes to the right-hand side of the motherboard. It can be a bit delicate and it is notched, so it will only go in one way. Once again, just be careful and you'll be alright. I'm also going to wire up our SSD drive while we're here with a SATA power cable going to one side of the drive and a SATA data cable, which comes included in your motherboard's box, going to the other side of the drive, with the other end plugging up to the headers on the bottom right-hand side of the motherboard. Alright then, the build is now looking really good, and it's a perfect time to install the graphics card. This is from Gigabyte, and it's their special white edition RTX 2070 Super. Genuinely, like really looks amazing. Now to install the graphics card, we need to take off this black plastic tab and push back this clip on our motherboard. We've also got to remove the second and third PCIe slot covers, just like so, before lining the graphics card up and slotting it into place. I think this might be the best looking white PC I've ever built. All that's left to do then is plug up our GPU power connectors and whack both side panels on before booting this machine up to see how it looks, but more importantly, how it performs. Roll the montage. Okay then, now you've seen just how good this system looks when it's all powered up, I've booted up 8 of the most popular titles to give you a really even picture of just how well it performs. Kicking things off with Apex Legends at 1440p high settings, you're looking in the region of 130 to 145 FPS. And the only instance in which it was significantly lower than this is when you're first kind of jumping out into the scene, into the world for the first time, where it's kind of rendering in that environment and you've got so much of the world in view all at once. Aside from that though, the game performed really well. No stuttering, no lag, it was super duper smooth, and that 130 to 145 FPS range is going to be great for even the most frame hungry esports players out there. Forza Horizon 4 was next up. It's one of my personal favourites as far as AAA titles go, and at 1440p Ultra, once again, you're looking around 130 frames per second. I mean, 40 or 50 is normally good enough for a racing title, so 130 is just insane, and once again, the game looked great. 4K gaming at around the 100, the 90 FPS mark would be more than possible at high settings as well, so you've got that option on the table if you'd like it. Talking of super high frame rates, Overwatch is next up. Another one of my favourite games. It's so fun, it's just completely and utterly addictive, and at 1440p ultra settings, you're looking around about 200 frames per second. Once again, you esports types, you people, you know, who need 144 frames per second for your 144Hz monitor, don't worry. Overwatch and Forza Horizon 4 are going to be great for that kind of gaming setup. Fortnite is next up, and once again, we're looking 1440p ultra settings, or epic settings to be precise, and at 200 frames per second average, you really can't complain. The game looks great. Once again, no stuttering, no lag. Your frame rate's going to be slightly lower when you jump out of the battle bus and first render in that environment. But apart from that, the game performed incredibly well. Call of Duty's Warzone is next up. I think it's safe to say the most popular game at the moment, and at 1440p high settings, with of course RTX disabled because the free Battle Royale mode doesn't actually support it, you're looking around about 100 frames per second. That's once again at 1440p high, so if you wanted 140, 150 FPS, either knock the resolution down to 1080 or just knock some of your visual settings down to medium or high settings to boost that frame rate even more. CSGO is next up today, probably the highest frame rate game on the list, which you probably could have predicted, but nevertheless at 1440p very high settings, you're looking between 200 and 400 FPS. Now that is quite a big fluctuation, you know, double and half the frame rate, but when 200 is your worst case scenario, you know that you're going to have a grand old time. GTA 5 is the penultimate game on my list today, the one but last title, and at 1440p high settings once again, with some of those render bars toned down slightly and anti-aliasing not notched too high, you're looking at 85 to 100 plus frames per second, and that's on the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode. So if you want to go back and compare this system against any of my other builds, you're more than able to do so. GTA 5 settings are really temperamental, and changing one thing, you know, one too many can really impact your frame rate. So if you're playing GTA 5, you know, wonder why your frame rate's a bit low, have a proper fiddle about with the settings, give it some time, and you'll get there in the end. Finally today we've got Valorant, the title which has just flown to success almost overnight. I'm happy to report that at 1440p high settings you're looking at over 240 frames per second, which is just kind of bonkers really. The game looks fantastic, once again no stuttering, no lag, no glitches of really any description, no screen tearing, so you can't go wrong with a bit of Valorant on this gaming PC build. With that being said though, that wraps it up not only for the benchmarks but for the video today. If you did enjoy it, make sure to give it a big old like rating and get subscribed if you want to see more from me. Thank you very much for watching though, and as always we'll see you in the next GeekaWhat video.